Welcome to another Bitwig episode. Today we're mixing drum and bass and especially mixing the kick with the bass with some core samples of Bitwig Studio. Let's take the tour. Now we can go to our browser at the right side here. There's actually some really good samples that comes with Bitwig in the core library. So if you download the package from Capson Pro Audio, you can go down and look at some of the drum samples that's included. Okay, so here we have the loop, and I've set the tempo of my project to 174, which matches up with this sample. But we could also make it 170 if we wanted. Then you just change the stretching mode to Spectral Elastic Pro to get some really good results with the resampling. But for this project, let's work with 174. Okay, so that's our drum sample, and now we need to find a bass so we can match up the kick with the bass, because that's what this tutorial is about. So. Here we have some really cool bass. But as you can hear, if we play these two tracks together, the kick and the drum loop and this bass, it's going to muddy up in the low end a little bit. Let's listen here. So how can we prevent this muddiness? Well, we can begin by looking at our drum loop. Let's open up an EQ5. And now we can solo that drum loop and see and find out where the kick hits. Let's use this cue point number 2. Okay, so it's around 64 Hertz. So let's drag that cue point down again. So what if we add an EQ to this bass track? Let's add the EQ5. And we drag down this, so we find the point 64 Hertz. And now we can actually make this cue point drag down the gain, reduce the gain, exactly when we have the kick hits. But since this is a drum loop, we also have kicks, snares, and hi-hats in the same loop. We can actually just listen through this loop and find out where the kick actually hits. And at those points we can add some hi-hats. So let's just find a hi-hat. Search for hi-hat and go up to package. Yeah, we can work with that one. And then we just make this a very short little audio clip here. We can actually make it much tighter. And we will use this to trigger our sidechain. But it's not an actual sidechain, but we're going to drag down the amplitude for the gain at the lows here for the bass, while we have the kick hits. So let's add this hi-hat whenever we have the kicks. We have it here, and we have it there, and we have it everywhere. And you can also add this sidechain for the snare parts also, if you feel that you have a lot of low end in the snares too. Okay, so now we have that part going on, and we can consolidate it. and drag this to the right side. I consolidate it by pressing Command J, and that makes it easier to drag this whole clip rather than selecting all these small clips. Now we can mute that and use that as our sidechain. So we go to the bass part and we add an audio sidechain and make sure that we select the hi-hat as our input for this sidechain, and we can probably increase the gain here for the sidechain input. Then we will also make a little bit of low pass and high pass to only focus in on a certain area of this hi-hat. And then for each hit here on the hi-hat, we're going to drag down the amplitude. So we press this modulation key, the skeleton key, and drag down plenty dBs for this EQ 2 point. Now if we solo the bass, we can clearly hear that the bass area is going away for each kick hit. We can even make it more pronounced effect. So now we will probably have a much more clear mix as the kick is coming through in the low end. If you also need to clean up a little bit of highs from that bass while the kick hits, you can also find the cue point up here where you have the clickiness of the kick. It's probably around 4K or something. And you can also modulate a little dip there, so you also reduce some gain in the highs here. Okay, so let's group that bass. So we have the bass in a separate group, and now we can move this EQ to the top of this group. So every audio clip that's contained within this group will be affected by this sidechain dipping. So we can add some more sounds in there. Maybe go to this Capson Pro and find it. And create a little drop here before this bass part. We can actually have the drums going on before there too. So let's move this over here and duplicate that vocal phrase. So if I disable this sidechaining EQ, we can clearly hear that it's a lot more muddy and less power in the kick because the bass and kick is interfering with each other. We can also drag down the attack, so we have a little bit faster attack and faster release on this sidechaining. This will give us a lot more headroom when we are making our master on the master bus, making the master effects. So we have around -11 dB integrated loops here for this little loop. Okay, so let's make this drop complete. We can make a little bit of low pass and high pass on the drums here for the first part before the real drop hits. And if you touch a fader here and go to your automation for that track, it will show up as in the automation lane. You can look here if I touch this button, which is the on and off button for the EQ2. You can see that it appears up here. But if we drag the frequency, it will show the frequency for the first EQ point. So let's just have that drop down as soon as the drop hits. And do the same thing with this high pass. As soon as the drop hits, we will open up the filter. Let's do a little pitch slide to this vocal effect because it's fun. So let's go in here, press pitch, and now we can see that we have this 0 line. It means that it's not pitched. And now we can drag this down to -12 semitones. So now the pitch will drop at the end here of this first part before the drop. Just like that. And if you hold Alt, you can adjust these curves. So you can really hone in and create a curvature that you like. So let's find a symbol. Let's go up here and select packages. Yeah, this one can work. And as you can see, all the audio files that I put in this group will be affected by the sidechaining that we have here. So even this symbol will be affected. Let's make that reversed, so we have a little bit of reversed sample into that hit. The bass area is quite hard to mix, but with this EQ tip and the audio sidechain, you can really clean up that bass area and make room for those kick hits so that they can come through. Another tip is to add a saturation on your drums, or parallel saturation. And that's very easy to do in Bitwig. You can add a chain like this, and the chain has a mix knob. So for this, for the container, you can add a compressor or a saturator if you have a saturator. But this compressor actually can act as a saturator. If we push it really hard like this with a fast release, fast attack, a little bit of gain and a high ratio, you can hear it actually sounds like a saturator or overdrive effect. And now we can drag it back and mix to taste. Yeah, so I hope you like this audio sidechain tip for the EQ in Bitwig. My name is Matthias and this is Morning Dew Media. Now you can continue to watch my next video. Thanks for watching today and shoot me any questions in the comments field below. See you in the next video. Bye bye!